Hey guys, welcome back to Runner Renovations, where today we're going to be learning how to build a collapsible workbench to help you save space in your garage. Here we go. So as you're starting this project, the first thing to think about is what do you want the size of your workbench to be? This is an old board we had lying around. It's 2 feet by 4 feet, which is going to be perfect for what we need it for. But there's 3 things to think about whenever you're choosing the size. One, the further you want it out from the wall is going to impact its ability to collapse against the wall. So you need to think about what do you want the depth of your workbench to be, because if it's too deep, it's going to hit the floor first before it collapses against the wall. The second thing is what do you want the height of it to be? And this impacts 2 things. One, its ability to collapse against the wall, because if it's really low, it's going to hit the floor first, or you'll have to have a more shallow workbench. But also the height impacts the collapsible legs underneath. If the workbench is too high and your workbench isn't that long, then the legs might be longer than your workbench is wide, and they're not able to collapse underneath the workbench. So you need to think about all 3 of those things before you design your workbench, and then you can get started. Once you determine the size of your workbench, you can build a support frame that the top will be secured to. I didn't want to spend any money on this project, so all the framework is made from 2x4s that I just had lying around. So I went ahead and constructed the frame. I did the front first, and then I did the sides, and I'm going to cut one more piece for the back. You'll have to subtract 3 inches, 1.5 for each 2x4 on the sides. And the reason I'm doing it inside of here, I feel like it'll be more secure to have the sides screwing in from here on the side into the back frame, as opposed to it going into it this way. I screwed the frame together with 3-inch exterior screws that I had lying around, and it's a good idea to put the frame together on a flat surface so it's flush with the top of the workbench. Alright, now that I've screwed my frame together and everything's flat like the top of my workbench, I'm going to flip it over and attach the top to the frame. I attach a workbench top with 1 1/4 inch screws, and it's a good idea to slightly recess them so they don't get caught on any future workbench projects. Alright, so now that we have our workbench top completed and framed, you gotta remember that the legs cannot be longer than your frame is wide. So for this, my legs can't be higher off the ground than 45 inches, or else they won't tuck up underneath. Also, it needs to be mounted in a position where it's going to be able to collapse and not hit the floor, or in my instance, this little brick ledge right here. So this is about 24 inches in depth, and so what we're going to do is I'm going to raise mine up to about 28 inches and then mount it there, and then we'll adjust the legs as needed. Before mounting your workbench to the wall, mark the locations of your studs as well as the height you'd like your workbench. The hinges that I'm using for this are regular just door hinges, because we just have a bunch lying around. And so instead of mounting these directly to the wall, I'm going to mount them to this, and the reason being is because being able to screw all 3 of these in to hold the weight of the workbench and whatever I'm working on is going to be better than screwing 1 screw directly into the stud. So we're going to go ahead and mount this. I chose this board because it's wider than the studs are on the wall. I'll go ahead and mount this at my determined height, and then I'll go ahead and mount the workbench to this board. When attaching your hinge board, use a level to ensure your workbench will be straight. I used 4 3-inch screws to secure my hinge board to the wall, 2 of which were through the middle screw holes in the hinges. I used 1 1/4 inch screws to attach the hinges to my workbench top. Alright, whenever you're doing the hinges, something that might be helpful is having some kind of wood or something to hold the workbench up when you're putting the hinges in. That way you're not having to hold it as well as putting the hinges, or you're going to have somebody help you do it. But once you have that done, you have a majority of your collapsible workbench finished. Now all you have to do is figure out the height of the legs. Alright, when you're determining the height for your legs, you want to go ahead and open up your workbench, and then you're going to hold it to where it's level. And once it's level, you're going to measure the distance for both legs, because in this instance it's in a garage, and the garage has a slight slope to it, so the legs aren't going to be the exact same size. Maybe in your instance they will be, but in mine they won't. So we're going to measure from the ground to the bottom of the top of your workbench, which would be the top of this 2x4 frame. Mounting pivoting legs can be difficult, so allow room for error and make your legs slightly longer than you need. In order for each leg to be able to rotate and collapse underneath the workbench, you need to cut off the two corners, that way it can rotate and collapse underneath the bench. So in order for the legs to collapse underneath the bench, they need to be offset. And so we're going to add a block of wood on this side. That way this leg sticks out a little bit further than this one, and they can collapse into the bottom of the workbench. I used 3-inch screws to attach both the block and the leg itself to the frame. When screwing the legs in, you want it about 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch off of what will be the top of the workbench, and pretty close to the side of the frame. That way it'll stop the leg from continuing to go out when you fold it out. I unattached my workbench to install the legs because it was easier to film, but they can easily be installed while it's still attached to the wall. When you're deciding the length of your workbench legs, you might want to make them a little bit longer than you anticipate needing. That way, if things aren't level, you can shorten one leg or the other to get everything level without having to change the height of your workbench or create new legs. Ours is looking pretty good, so I think we're about done. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, comment below. If you like it, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Peace and God bless.